We've had a long discussion about it. We'll maybe start the next one. We'll see what the time is. So the end of the Mishnah concluded that just like the best way to think to have was a good heart, the worst thing is a wicked heart. So the Mishnah says, Rabbi Lozer Omer, Rabbi Lozer says, Levra, a wicked heart. And Omar Lahem, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said to all of his students, his 5 students, he said, Roe ani estirei Rabbi Elazar ben Aruch, midibrechem. His words are better than yours, or I prefer them. Why? Because shebechlal devarav derechem. Whatever he's saying is included in what you're saying already. That is, he's covering it all, because ultimately your heart, your feelings, how you feel about it is going to make all the difference in the world as to how you conduct yourself. Um, when he talks about a bad heart, so one thing just to what it covers, so it's referring to not just uh, things between people, it refers to mitzvahs between a person and Hashem, your attitude towards that, as well as your attitude between other people. In fact, an interesting thing that's brought down, we just read last week in the Torah, Parshas Kedoshim, one of the mitzvos is lo sikom v'lo sitar, don't take revenge and don't bear a grudge. Right? So the idea of what's in your heart is really affecting whether or not you're going to be bearing a grudge. The classic examples is that somebody came over to you, or sorry, rather you went to the person, you wanted to borrow something, and the person said no, and now the person comes back to you to borrow something, and what do you say? So if you say no, I'm not going to do it because you didn't do it for me, that's revenge. If you say I'm going to do it for you, even though you didn't do it for me, that's bearing a grudge, right? So you can lend it to him, but you shouldn't feel, the idea is that in your heart, you shouldn't have any negative feelings because the other day he didn't want to lend you something. And that's all rooted in the heart. Whether or not you're going to be bearing a grudge is if you're a person who, you're negative about other people, unfortunately, you're going to probably bear that grudge. If you can get that out of your heart and have a feeling of, I care about other people and I'm forgiving, then you won't bear that grudge. Tiferes Yisrael points out that the heart ultimately is the root of everything. And he says, just like a tree, in the case of a tree, if you can have a beautiful tree, well, not for probably some of us have had this experience. We have a tree, it seems to look good, but whoever's inspecting it realizes that the bottom is rotten. The roots are no good, and that tree isn't going to make it, right? So if the roots are rotten, it doesn't make a difference how beautiful the tree looks, the leaves and everything else, because that's not going to help that tree. It's ultimately going to go. So he says, so to a bad heart, it's going to take over the whole body. It's going to overcome the intellect, and it's going to be basically a disaster for the person. And it says also a person who has a bad heart is going to automatically connect to other people who feel that way. He's going to connect to people who are bad friends, bad neighbors. That person won't set the boundaries against sin. These are all the things that were mentioned by the other students of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai as things to avoid. One very interesting one is the Seforno, who says also, again, of course, that the heart matters most. And he looks at it as an idea of when you do an action, your intention makes a huge difference. So even some people, sometimes you have a situation where you're doing something which seems to be a bad thing, but you're doing it for a good reason. And he quotes a Gemara that says, the Gemara in Sukkah actually says that sometimes you could have a sin, where he says a sin that is shalol lishma, lishma, that is for the sake of heaven, can be greater, and anyone questions it, so equal to a mitzvah which is done not for this, just because some ulterior motive. And the Gemara there actually, and Seforno cites it, gives examples from history. One is Yael, and the other is Tamar. Those are two examples that the Gemara gives. So Tamar was the daughter-in-law of Yehuda, and she was supposed to marry his son after the first two husbands had died, and she didn't happen, and therefore she acted like a prostitute on the road, and she had a relationship with him, and ultimately the kingdom of Yehuda is coming from that union, and Moshiach is going to come from that union. So here you had a situation, and there was a lot of discussion and commentaries on what her motivation was. She wanted to be from the house of Yehuda, etc., etc. But it was a seemingly immoral act, yet it was done with an intention to serve God, and look what happens. Mashiach is going to come from that union. Yael is the hero or heroine of the story where the army of Sisera was attacking the Jews, and she ended up killing him when he escaped to her tent. According to some commentaries, she actually seduced him. Others, she just fell asleep, whatever exactly it was. But again, it was an example where she did something where her intention was pure and her intention wasn't, and she's getting credit for it. Now, it's not necessarily try this at home. We don't know where all that applies for to do a sin and say, oh, I have good intentions. It's not so easy to actually have proper intentions for a sin. Most of us, we may convince ourselves that we have proper intentions, but we don't necessarily really do. So, but the concept behind it is that it's how your heart is. What is it that you really are? Do you truly have a good intention? Then ultimately what you're doing is going to be good. And if your intentions are not that way, either if they're just subpar, then your action is going to certainly reflect whatever it is. And if your intentions are negative, that's going to have a very negative influence on everything you do. And even when you have an opportunity to do something good, you're going to ultimately taint it. And that's really the bottom line, is that the actions that are good or could have been good will be tainted when your motivations are negative and when your feelings are negative, and you will turn something good into a negative action. And not just because you thought it. It's going to actually end up happening that I think we can think about examples again where you see somewhere someone originally, or maybe even ourselves, sometimes we have negative feelings about something, and we're not going into doing that action in a good manner, and ultimately it really feels bad. It feels like I didn't even want to do that thing. I helped somebody out, but I didn't want to do that, and it doesn't have that full positive aspect to it, and that is coming from your feelings inside, and we can work on our feelings inside to make them positive. It will reflect in all of the actions that we do, and that's why the statement of Rabbi Elazar ben Arach, both when he said the proper way is a leiv tov and the negative way is a leiv ra, is that ultimately that has an effect on everything we do. And I'm going to hold it here for today.